or Dessous, Dessous, Dessous,
Dessous, yeah.
Dessous
It
Loungewear.
means
That
it means underneath in French.
yeah, Dessous. Oh, that's probably a cool way to say it.
Yeah,
um,
Dessous.
so yeah, one of the things we like to do is talk to all types Dessous Loungewear. So what our sponsor tonight is Newsly, this iOS app. Just go into the iOS store, and if you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. We're going to be on Newsly later tonight. So, welcome to the program. How are you tonight?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks.
Yeah, it's really cool to talk to executive, and you're a designer as well, right?
Yes. The founder of the company and the designer.
So, were you a designer first, and then you decided you wanted to create your own company?
No, not at all. In fact, I had zero experience in the fashion industry. I can go through my long and winding career for you, but I've done lots of different things. And I've always just loved caftan. So that's the number one thing that my company makes is caftans and tunics and things like that. I've worn them since I was much younger. It's funny though. The more people I meet, the more I realize that people don't know what a caftan is. Which for me, I grew up in the 70s, so it was pretty clear to me. So you have to, if I'm talking to a guy, I have to say it's a muumuu.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
I'm a child of the '70s. I probably know what is that. I don't
Yeah,
probably know
exactly.
the other name for.
Yeah.
I would be guys would probably be we'd be like, I don't know.
I mean,
know.
muumuus is kind of tied in. It's kind of unattractive. Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
call
It's
it
probably not the
elevated
right word
muumuus.
today.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe that's not the
caftan.
right word today. Yeah,
Yes,
today, like, you probably
exactly.
wanna reframe it. So you as a designer and you're running a company, you don't want that legacy of
Exactly. Muumuu, exactly. Or I'll say, like Mrs. Roper
but,
on Three's Company.
yeah.
So I've always loved
That's a good way to
caftans.
remember it.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows that. Everyone our age, at least. And
Yeah.
I would joke with my friends all the time that I was going to start a caftan company. And we would say, I would say, I'm going to call the company Never You Mind. So it's going to be like, never you mind what's under here as we get older. But I named it Dessous, which means underneath. So, COVID hit, and I've been a stay-at-home mom doing different projects for a long time, and I just decided that it was now or never to start the company, and so here we are, like 9 months later.
So there actually was COVID the inspiration to actually do it, to do your own company, or you were already thinking in that way
I
before it
was
hit?
already thinking about it, but it was always in my mind, it was always like a small Etsy store or something, really simple. But as it went on, I just it became a real company. I have my caftans are manufactured in LA right now. I'm working with a company in India also who's going to be they're going to
Mhm.
be making some for me. But my focus is on sustainable fabrics, sustainability. I make sure that the factories I'm working for are,
Yeah.
ethical and responsible and the whole thing. So that kind of gives me some
Was that
parameters.
the whole
Yeah,
yeah, that's an important pitch for, like, the today's market,
yeah. Well, I
I think.
didn't want to, I'm obviously aware of what's going on in the environment, and I didn't want to do anything that was going to add to that. And, I mean, new product is 100% sustainable because you're creating something and you're using energy to do that. But I try to be as sustainable as possible, even in my packaging and everything.
Well, I think that's very important because I have a 23-year-old daughter, and she's one of these, like, her generation is very keen on, I don't want to buy that unless I know they're carbon neutral.
I love that.
They're not using labor and they're not doing this. Yeah. So my
Yeah, that's
daughter is
great.
always telling, like, me and my wife, like, you shouldn't buy that. You shouldn't buy this. You shouldn't buy that.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, I
the
didn't
kids
know.
are way
Sorry.
more knowledgeable. I know, it's funny. Although I will go with my kids to like Target and they'll want something and I'll be like, I don't know, Cambodian babies made that.
Yeah. But my daughter's like, she's like college age, so she's gotten on the bandwagon. Like, she's like real active.
Good. That's, I mean, it's we're leaving them a damaged earth.
But I think
So
it's
what's that?
yeah, she's very in. Yeah, she's very into, brands like yourself. She would be probably very interested into it because, like, that's her focus. She's an artist
Great.
herself, and
Oh,
so she's
cool.
really into, like, the typical kind of artist mindset that seems to be like
Right.
involved with society and things like that. But so why did you focus on the caftans? Like, what was that? Is there a particular reason why you did?
Well, it's I've always loved them. I think they're super comfortable and they also look chic and sexy, and it's just one of those things where you can wear a sweatpant outfit, but you're just not going to you're not going to be like floating through the room in your caftan. So that was one of the things, and I've just always loved them. And I tried to find a company that did
Mhm.
sustainable caftans, and there are a couple of them, but their price point is crazy. It's $600 and up. So that was my focus, was trying
Oh, wow.
to create sustainable caftans and keep the price point where it's accessible to more people.
And also it's like, okay, I can get a niche. I can take that market and I can have
Right.
that angle. Is that like what's
Yeah,
important when you do a business, to kind of figure out like what's your market and what's going to be your pitch to your
absolutely.
client base?
Yeah. Yeah,
Did you have
one
to?
of the first things you do is who's my ideal client, and who's my ideal customer, and what is my niche, right? So for me, my
Yeah.
niche
Did
is
you have to?
women my age. Yeah, it's it's
Did you do a lot of
I'm
research to figure that?
I did. I did. I knew nothing. I worked in retail when I was in high school, but I really knew nothing about how clothing was made. So I had to just start by reading and going online, and you know, I just kind of dug around as best I could. I had a couple books, and that's really how I learned the basics. Um, then I joined
Mhm.
a sustainable fashion um, incubator accelerator called Factory 45. That was super helpful. Being an entrepreneur is lonely, and especially I needed people
Yeah.
who kind of understood the business more. Yeah, and I wanted colleagues that I could bounce ideas off of. So it was a great program, and it was like a 6-month program. So if anyone wants to start a sustainable fashion brand, call Factory 45. But it's super helpful. I was assigned to a mentor, and we went through the whole process up until launch. Um, Taught a lot about manufacturing and fabrics and marketing and you name it. So that was really great. I joined it kind of a little bit late in the game, so I had to do a lot of research before that.
So how did you find
Um,
that group of people to help you? Like in music, we have collectives, right? So a
yeah,
lot of
right.
musicians will go find like-minded musicians that are in the same genre, and then we kind of all go on tour together, because if 10 bands
Oh,
show up
sure.
at the gig, yeah,
Right.
have a better shot of being able to club or
Yeah.
to control the venue, and so that you can guarantee that all your people are going to be heard. Is like so it's kind of similar in my mind, but
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing about the Factory 45 program is I'm connected to alumni who went through the program ages ago and have their companies up and running and are doing really, really well. Um, and I've connected with people like me who have just launched or are about to launch. So it's kind of nice. I
Mhm.
have more I have colleagues really, and that's kind of what I
A
miss the
mentor,
most.
like a
Mentors, yeah,
is
definitely.
that like a mentor like student relationship where you're new and you got the people that
Right,
have been doing it, and then you get they put you under their wing and you kind of are in this kind of like I don't
exactly.
know. Yeah, it just seems like an internship, but it's not exactly because you actually have a business and
Right.
you're not an intern. You're building your own business off of the kind of roadmap. They're providing you like roadmaps, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, their program is absolutely wonderful. There's, like,
Yeah,
different parts of the program, and it's, like, it lays it all out, and you have, like, projects to do before you launch, and it's been great. And then you launch, and it's like, "Okay, here we go."
so I wondered, like, in terms of your business, how do you actually get your manufacturing determined? Like, how do you determine who's going to make your product?
It's
Is that
not
a lot of
easy.
work to figure out like who's going to make the right quality and who's going to
It
do it?
is.
Like, give you the end product that you want at the quality
Right.
you want at the price you want.
It's not easy. It's a lot of I mean, the first manufacturer I went with that made my samples, I just Googled, and they were here in Atlanta where I am. And then I think I met some others. I had another manufacturer in LA that I can't remember how I connected with them, probably Googling, and they did sustainable projects, sustainable fashion. And then shortly after that, they decided they weren't going to do manufacturing anymore. They were just going to do consulting. But they turned me on to my
So that's
little
good.
factory in LA. Yeah, it's been a long and winding road. I'll tell you that. They've been great. It's
To get your
interesting. There are
business
more and
started, like,
more, yeah, more and more small manufacturers that are doing sustainable work. It's really hard to find though. Sustainable fabric is very expensive and it's more expensive for smaller companies because you're not buying in huge bulk, you know. So that's a little
yeah,
tricky. That
bulk
it
is the big thing, right? That's how,
Right. Yeah, a factory will have
yeah, because
MOQs,
I guess
which
the
is
nylons,
mhm. Yeah, now I'm working with, the company in India. I was looking for a company that did organic cotton, like Indian block prints, and I had a really hard time
okay.
finding somebody who did that in organic cotton, but I found this wonderful, Masala Threads is a company I'm working with in India, and they're absolutely great, and they do all kinds of sustainable fabrics, so they're working on some stuff for me right now. It's exciting.
Well, I think the big pitch is like, every industry is trying to prove that they can do more sustainability.
Right.
Even from record industry, like when we do the packaging, they go to paper instead of plastic. When you have a
Mhm.
CD, if you're gonna do that, if you're doing, if you have vinyl, you don't wrap it in plastic. You maybe
Right.
wrap it in paper. There's a
Yep.
lot of like kids today, they're more mindful of that. They're like, oh, back in my day, back in the 80s, oh, I don't care about that. But like now the kids today,
Yeah.
like if they see the plastic on there, they're like, I'm not buying it.
Exactly. Well,
So
and I'm like it comes down to, like, packaging. I had to find sustainable stickers because sometimes you have, like, a sticker that can't be, gone you can't throw
mm,
it in the compost or wherever you're gonna put your packaging.
yeah,
Tags, you name it, everything. It's
yeah,
a project
there's
to
a lot of
look to
stuff.
make sure that you're getting the right items. Um, but it's been great. I did get some help through Factory 45. They have, databases of companies they've worked with. And other than that, it was just me kind of digging around and calling companies and seeing what they did.
So how did you get your distribution? Is that all through your website, or did you partner with
It's
merchants?
it's still I'm doing direct to consumer. So I have my website. So and because I'm brand new, I'm just doing my own fulfillment right now. As we grow, I'll probably use a fulfillment center. But for now, it's little on me.
Oh, that's cool. So you don't have to have a big warehouse full of stock. You're not doing that kind of thing with the big
Right.
distribution network, like the
Yep.
big Amazons that'll order into
Right.
that.
And
Yeah.
the way I've been doing my sales model is a pre-order model, which means that the garments aren't made until you order them. So if there's a buyer for each piece I make,
Oh,
so
on
I'm not
demand.
doing a ton of inventory. It's the best way of going about it. It's not easy because, dealing with a manufacturer who's doing kind of like one-offs and small lots makes it tough. But it's a great way to be able to do something more sustainable for a small company.
Yeah. So it's that kind of on demand,
Right.
type of model, right? Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, luckily, like, music today, everything's digital, right?
Right.
So we do get into manufacturing of like vinyl. Vinyl is
Right.
like the new gold for musicians. So when it work,
Yeah, we're
the
going
vinyl
back
is
to vinyl.
vinyl. I
I
mean, it's
just
made of
ordered
plastic.
an album. Yeah. It's funny. My daughters are way into vinyl
But
now.
it's not something you throw away. You keep it.
Right. Oh, they've got all my
Well, for the
old records.
musician, it's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know the
Well,
whole, yeah.
music and when we're yeah, I mean, artist compensation. If I sell a $25 vinyl record, I
Yeah.
get more of that money than a .006 for a stream.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it
that
makes
whole
more.
thing.
You actually can have a smaller
Yeah.
base. Like you could have like under 100,000 fans and sell 100,000 vinyls, where the record company would say you got to sell 1 million downloads or 1 million
Right.
streams, and
Yeah.
you'll make
That's why
way
I think
more
it's great
money
that kids are
with the
into it.
100,000. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's just
Uh,
more. It's a cooler. it- Yeah, but I think you
yeah,
mentioned that one thing you were working on was actually working on a documentary. There's something else that you were doing besides your
yes.
business.
Yes. I've done a lot of different things. Um, I started with an art undergrad, then I went to law school and I practiced entertainment law in LA for a while and hated it. And then from there, I started doing
Mhm.
TV, film, and video producing, so production. So, as I was home with my kids most of the last, 15 years, um, I'll still pick up a production job here and there. So yes, I've been working on a documentary for the last 7 years, and it's about an Athens, Georgia band called 5/8. And they're kind of that band that, like the best band you've
Mhm.
never heard of kind of thing. Um, so I'm
Yeah.
working with the director, Mark Pilvinsky, and yeah, so it's been really, really, we have a cut. It was great. COVID hit. We thought we could make it better. So we're still working on it. But it's been really fun. And it's kind of tied me
Well,
into the Athens music scene. And I'm originally from Chicago, so I didn't really know much of anything. So it's been great.
yeah,
And
REM broke from that scene. Back in the
yes,
day, like REM, Michael Stipe. I was
yeah,
I'm a child of the '70s, and I
me
got
too.
into like college radio because of like from REM, and the
Yeah.
Athens scene I really got into, and I was really interested in their take on Southern mythology when they did like Fables of the Reconstruction. They just had a different feel. They sounded like the Birds, but not like
Yep.
the Birds.
Yeah. Right.
And kind of style where it was like very, very sound painting. Like you didn't know exactly what he was saying. And it was a lot of mystery. And then he went to
No
Warner
one knew what
Brothers.
Michael
He
Stipe
went to
was
Warner
saying.
Brothers. Yeah, then he went to Warner Brothers and they controlled his diction and they made it so you could hear what he was saying. But when he was on
Right.
IRS, you didn't know what he was saying. But I actually like those IRS records better.
That's
But
yeah,
just
the
my
old
opinion.
school ones. Well, it's funny that
Yeah.
you mentioned REM because I just finished working on a music video for a new band called The Bad Ends. And it's the lead singer from the band 5/8 that I'm doing the documentary about. And the drummer in their band is Bill Berry from REM. And this is the first
Oh wow, it's Bill
project.
Berry.
Yeah, it's
He's
pretty
playing.
exciting. So yeah, Bill, I don't know if you remember,
Well,
but
that's
Bill,
awesome.
yeah, it's so great. Bill had
I know what
an
happened.
aneurysm or something and had to quit the
Well,
band ages ago. And so this is his first project. He hasn't been in a band
during the
since.
Monster tour.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, during the Monster tour where they were really big. I mean, they just got on Warner Brothers. They had Losing My Religion, the previous album, a couple other
Yeah.
albums, and then they went and did Monster, which was like this big thing. And then toured. And as they toured, like Stipe had a surgery thing where you had to get surgery.
Yep.
And then like everybody got sick.
Right. I remember.
Everybody
Yeah, they
in the
all got
band
sick.
got sick during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. So
and then Bill ended up saying, well, I'm done. He's
right.
But
yeah, he was farming. He was a farmer for a very long time. He has a beautiful house outside of Athens. And I actually went there to interview him for the 5/8 documentary, which the title is Weirdo.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Yeah. So it was great. I got to meet Bill then. And then, everyone in Athens kind of knows each other. But Mike Mantione, who is the lead singer of 5/8, just connected with Bill on the street one day and said, "Hey, you want to jam with this new band I've got together?" And it was really going to be a Mike solo album, but everyone kind of came on and they got really excited and made new music, and they've got an album coming out in January.
Well, that's fantastic because I loved his drumming. I
Yeah.
thought, well, as a whole unit, REM is just a fantastic band, but his drumming was really great because they're like a post-punk band, right? They
Yeah.
had like bands like Joy Division, and
Right.
that were punk, and then became new wave. But REM wasn't new wave.
No.
They weren't really punk, and sometimes they could go there, but
Right.
they tended to be in this kind of really alternative indie zone.
Yeah,
Where
kind
they
of
could
college,
channel a
indie
little bit of
college.
Birds because
Yeah, it was
they're
like them, the
Rickenbacker. They had their 12-string
Replacements.
guitar. Yeah, Replacements. I love Paul Westerberg and the Replacements. I
Me
grew up
too.
listening to like Let It Be and Tim and Pleased to Meet Me.
Mhm.
And another band I
Yeah.
was really into on SST was Who's Do, Bob Mould and Grant Hart. I don't know
Oh,
if you ever heard
so
them out of Minneapolis.
Bob Mould is wonderful. His Dave Barbie had played with Bob Mould and Sugar, and he was working on the album for these guys too. So everyone's
Oh,
kind of
it's
tied in
awesome.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty
Who's
great.
Do, Replacements, REM. Those are when I was a kid. I actually ended up being like do college radio at my college, Bowdoin
Mhm.
College, when I was there in the 80s, like 86 to
Yeah.
90. And I was playing all Who's Do and Replacements and REM. And people would be like, "Why are you playing that?" I said, "Because that's what's happening. That's what I think
Right.
is," and it was because all those guys were getting signed by Warners or bigger companies because they saw it. They saw it that music was really the cutting edge of where things were going. And it was the
Absolutely.
college radio people that we saw it. We kids like me, when we were like, these bands are cool. Maybe you don't think they're cool, but they're cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember, I would go to tons of shows in Chicago when I was in college, and it would be like, little punk bands like Naked Ray Gun and, just pretty much everyone that came through. So I did a lot of that. But yeah, I got to really interview a bunch of people. I'm producing, so my partner's doing most of the interviews. But we got to interview Bill, we got to interview Dave Barbie, and a bunch of musicians. Yeah, from a bunch of well-known musicians in Athens, which is great.
So when do you think the target release for this, and where is it going to go? Is it going to go directly to like all these different channels that exist at work?
Yeah, for the album. Yeah, the album
I guess
is
the
going to be
documentary and
okay. The music video was just released a couple days ago that I worked on, which is they've got I think it's New West Records is maybe the label. I forget. But if you look up the Bad Ends Band, you'll come up with 2 different videos. And so we just finished my video is the one where it's the guys are in a restaurant. So that will tell you exactly which one. But
that's your video. Okay.
Yeah, it was really exciting because it just premiered on All Songs Considered on NPR. So they premiered the song, and then they had the music video on their website, which is pretty cool. Oop, you froze.
Well, I'm
there
always into like trying to find like the next big good cool. And I'm a very big promoter of emerging and independent artists. I mean, that's my primary thing I do on my podcast. I've been doing since 2016. Is I try to break. Most of the people that come on my show are independent and emerging artists world that
That's
I
awesome.
find as a musician myself, but I also want to give them attention because at the top 20, everybody gets attention in the top 20. I want to take the bottom 500 and actually take what's really, to me, going on is in the underground. Artists that are coming back, or artists that are trying something new. Like maybe they've been there, but they're trying something new and they're coming back. I've been a big fan of that. I mean, I grew up, always rooting for like the underdog. I mean, I was listening to the Velvet Underground. I was listening to like Big Star.
Yeah.
I was listening to the
Big Star
bands that were like unsung.
Yeah. It's funny because Mike there's a song when he references Big Star in the first music video. So it's kind of funny.
Oh, you do? That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of bands did that. Like Replacements did it in the song Alex Chilton. The Counting Crows have done it. There's a lot of bands that like to me the Big Star is influential as the Velvets. Like if you check, Big Star influenced a lot of alternative grunge bands, like indie bands were all being influenced by Big Star.
Oh, absolutely.
In the same way that bands were influenced by Lou Reed and the Velvets, Big Star was this kind of unknown band that really defined a lot of 90s music. A lot of 90s bands would name check Alex Chilton and Chris Bell all the time.
Right.
And I caught it. Like Paul was totally enamored. If you listen to Replacements, they are channeling a lot of Big Star. That's kind of what Paul was into. And I went back and listened to it. I'm like, this stuff is fantastic. I was like,
it aged well. Yeah, it doesn't. It's funny because I listen to that kind of stuff and I'm like, it still sounds fresh to me. It doesn't sound dated, which is so great.
Well, most people probably know him from that 70s show where Cheap Trick actually covered like In the Street, and they think it's a Cheap Trick song, and it's actually a Big Star song.
Big Star. That's so funny.
But I mean, Big Star, like Cheap Trick is kind of in the same zone as Big Star. They actually took that kind of sound and were successful, where Big Star on Stacks, they couldn't get it.
Right. It's interesting. These big stars,
they could have been.
Exactly. They could have been huge. And that's kind of the deal with this 5/8 band that I'm working on the documentary for, it was like they were the next big thing. And everyone was really excited about it. And for a number of different reasons, it just never quite made it. But when people who talk about seeing them live are like, I mean, I'll bump into people and they'll be like, 5/8, of course. Yeah. But it's
so
dealing
like
with
the next big star, Velvet Underground.
yeah. And then, it's little things like an album got pushed back and the label kind of interfered in things. And, back then it was like, it was a group project with the label. And sometimes that didn't go well for bands.
Yeah. Well, there was a whole kind of problem with, once Napster came in there,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of bands that were independent anymore because the record label started having big trouble with
Right.
monetization.
Mm-hmm.
So the bands that they used to support, they suddenly wouldn't support, like all these bands that were like SST, IRS records. They stopped being able to fund these independent bands, and that
Right.
to me was a big shame because like, that's where I feel even today. That's where all the energy is. That's where I always go to SoundCloud. I go to the underground bands. I go on the YouTube. I go on TikTok trying to go on Instagram. Instagram is like my primary source. I find
Okay.
tons
Yeah.
of independent emerging bands on Instagram. And if you actually troll it looking, there's a lot of really good acts. They aren't getting the attention at
Oh,
all.
sure.
And that's where I mostly get most of the bands I talk to. I
Oh,
find
that's
them there
great.
that people, and I find them from all over the world, from Berlin and Iceland, Latvia, Australia,
Cool.
and that's who I bring on the show. And
I love
it's
that.
interesting. It's very similar.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Leads to your interest in it.
It's interesting that in the documentary, the drummer from 5/8, Patrick Ferguson, says that, in some ways right now is the best time in music because you can go on, Instagram or whatever, and you can put your music out there. And if it's good, it catches on, and it's like anyone can get on there. It's not like you have to get a label, you have to get signed, the whole thing. So, I mean, it's kind of
The
great
gatekeepers
because
aren't there.
exactly. Yeah. So that's really interesting how this.
Yeah, it's a big shift. Like the big problem that a lot of bands, like when I was coming up as a kid, and I'm like my 55 now, right? When I tried to, get into the industry, like the gatekeepers wouldn't bands get through. Like we couldn't get through. It's like, okay, fine.
Right.
So I just kept on going. And eventually I got to the world where I'm on SoundCloud, then I start podcasting, then I start getting opportunities. So now my stuff is out there and I have a niche audience. Maybe I hit 100,000 worldwide.
Yeah, you do electronic.
But I end up being able to produce it. I do what you call I call expansive sound. Expansive sound
I like that.
is a combination of multiple genres.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a combination like progressive rock, funk, punk aesthetic.
That's all good.
Things like that.
Very cool.
So yeah, so I mean, like the people I'm into, like Yes, Funkadelic, Pink Floyd, punk aesthetic, like The Clash, Joy Division, Who's to Do. We put a lot of, and then maybe a band like Sun Ra. So I basically can go anywhere.
That's awesome.
So I like, I'm a musician. I'm a keyboardist. So I'm like, my idea is to have all these Moogs and Rolands, like the Rick Wakemans of the world, and in the Yeses. That's what the kind of place I'm coming from. So
I love that, and you can be a one-man band too.
Yeah, I basically do that. Sometimes I merge with other guys. I have guitar players. I have drummers come in. I can link up with other bands. I've been able to link up with like a Japanese producer, a video game developer that I'm working with in South Africa. So in the indie world, you can do stuff that you wouldn't think you would be able to do.
Right.
So
yeah,
you end up getting work just because there's a bunch of people that are looking for different things.
Yeah,
And if you
exactly.
get yourself out there, suddenly I'm working with like all kinds of people. But there's people
Hmm.
that they dig my somebody called and they play Moog based on this record. Or help me produce
Cool.
this record. Do a video game
Yeah,
soundtrack. And then you're not in the normal structure of what the record companies try to control. I'm still able to
exactly.
get work. And I'm not
Hmm.
able to do what they wanted to put me in this kind of puppet thing and control me. I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
get to do what I want.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like good and bad the way music has changed. I mean, we talked about the financial aspect of it, and the artists just aren't getting paid like they were. And on the other hand, it's like just artistically freeing to not have so many hands in the pot.
Yeah, and then
So
you
it's
can
been,
find other things. Like you can get into sync licensing, you can get into online
hmm,
performances, you can play festivals, you can do
yeah,
your merch, right? So then, like I said, with the vinyl discussion, right? All the kids are into
yep,
vinyl. You can live off of vinyl. You
right,
could
and
live
merch.
somebody
Yeah.
wanting a reel to reel. There was a company in Russia that's making reels, actual
Oh
reel to
wow,
reel releases. You get them in a box and
wow,
it's a reel of the
old
project.
school.
And they're custom like buyers that will buy it because it's kind of like vinyl where it has that analog sound
Right.
and it really cool package has art and it's unique,
Yeah.
right? So then it's more collect. So you get that different type of buyer. You get the buyers looking for a collectible, and then you can get into that niche market and you can show up at conventions and you can do things and yeah, you just find a different way to present yourself and you don't have to sell millions and you don't have to be
Right.
in the top 10 where you can
Exactly.
still be functioning.
Yeah. Actually, and that's how I'm
That's our
approaching
business.
my new company is like, I don't mind being a small company. I'm 53 now, so I'm not like building an empire. But yeah, I mean, you find your
Mhm.
niche and do your best there, which has been great. Um, I was
Yeah,
going to say,
I think you just don't
because
go beyond your means. Like, yeah.
right. Yeah. So one of the what reasons I started my Dessous was, I'm 53. I'm still wearing like Vans and concert T-shirts and things like jeans, and you get to a
Yeah.
point where it's like, well, where does that go when when I get a little bit older? It's like I'm not going to wear house coats and stretchy polyester pants like my grandma did. So it's like, well, where did the
Mhm.
Gen
Exactly.
Xers go? you know? So it's kind of interesting that,
Well,
to,
everybody, all the kids I know, they just walk around. They walk around with their pajamas even when they go out.
yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've seen that dropping my kids off
That's
at school.
that's they like.
Yeah. It's,
I'm looking at it as a dad. I'm like, you're wearing your pajamas to school.
everyone is. I know. I know. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
It's funny. I have
that's a
two
different
girls
world.
and they're completely opposite. One of them dresses like had pretty much every color possible, head to toe. And then the other one's just kind of, I tell her she dresses like a park ranger. So you
Yeah,
got
but there's
both
a lot of people,
sides.
they just don't care. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't
right.
care. My daughter's an artist, so she likes to get, like, retro clothes
Yeah.
from multiple eras. She'll look for,
Yeah,
like,
that's great.
20s flapper stuff, and then she'll look for
That's great.
40s stuff, and then she'll look into 50s, or she'll just pick different different time periods and kinda just and I think it's like
Yeah.
everything's open, and that's like with music, it's like everything's kinda open, like, if you wanna do a flapper era type song, you could do it.
Yeah, right.
Right? If you wanna do Japanese music, you can go channel the Carpenters and actually bring it back, and you'll get a
Love the
niche
Carpenters.
because people
Yeah,
like it. And so,
totally.
yeah, I mean, there's a band called Tennis out of Colorado that kinda channels the Carpenter vibe,
The
and,
Carpenters.
they're
Oh,
really cool.
that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
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 I
they have
love
the
that the
it was
kids
a
see
husband and wife.
oh, cool. It
Yeah.
sounds familiar. I'll have to look them up. Um, But I was going to say, I love that the kids are getting really into like vintage clothing and resale and all that good stuff. You know, we always went to the thrift store, but they're not as good as they were.
Salvation Army, yeah. I mean, I grew up
I'll be,
kids Salvation Army.
yep. Yeah. I know, it's funny. I'm like, they're not the way they used to be. Thrift stores used to be really good. But you know, you've got a bunch of
Well, I
different
kind of grew up
resale.
yeah.
Yeah,
So is
you
is
know,
that part of the vibe?
yeah, well, that's just, you know, it's when I talk to younger people about sustainable fashion, it can be very off-putting because sustainable fashion is pretty expensive. But then there are lots of other things that you can do. You can, you know, resell, you can do a clothing swap. I went to a clothing swap just the other night. That was really great. You can reuse your clothes, you can mend them, you can, you know what I mean? You can take them to the tailor. So I think a lot of people think, you know, sustainable fashion is just new stuff that's made of sustainable fabrics and is pretty expensive. But there's lots of different ways that you know, younger kids and adults for that matter
You
can
can
be
come at it.
sustainable. Yeah. I spend a lot of time on
Yeah.
Poshmark is a
Go into
great
the web.
website. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
really,
I was
there's
thinking
lots of
about
ways to
that
be.
because
Yeah. Yeah, the kids are always on
it was like
Depop. That's
reuse.
what. Yeah, well, it's kind of like our thrift store, but you know,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
it's online. Everything's online.
Everything's online. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole world today. You know, we're doing online festivals. Like I just got into an
Oh,
online
cool.
festival thing where
Huh.
I'm playing on Friday on like Sessions Live. But yeah, they actually are coming after artists to get on these online festivals.
Cool.
And
So is it
they
just a
kind of
stream?
saw me because yeah, it's a live stream only. This Sessions Live is a company that only does online. They're like a
Cool.
Ticketmaster, but they just do online events, and then they go looking on the net for
Mhm.
artists there online. I've been doing online performances since 2016, so
Wow.
I've been doing it for a while. So they
You're old
actually
school.
came to me and they had a conference call with me. And they said, "Hey, we want you to come on our platform because we know you do this, and we
Yeah.
can put you on stages, and you can do like 15 minutes here and 20 minutes there." I said, "Okay." I'll do it. And because I like it, I just like to play. Like any musician, if I get a
Right.
gig and I get to do it,
Yep.
I'm gonna go do it because I just like to play.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah,
that's
it's
that's that that's
that's how
that's a
it's the guys in 5/8, in one part of the documentary that Dan Horowitz is like, I don't mind touring. Like people hate touring and you know, they miss their families and the whole thing. But I just like anytime I can play is a good day for me, which I thought
yeah.
was, you know, it's
Well,
pretty great if you're playing every night.
I think the nature of a working musician
Right.
is that they wanna get that gig. They either wanna be a session musician and get those gigs doing the
Right.
session work, or they wanna be a touring musician, and really it's a lifestyle.
Yeah,
You think about like the
absolutely.
Grateful Dead, you think of a band
Mhm.
like a Pearl Jam, they make it a business. I mean, they
Right.
operate in a kind of Grateful Dead way. I mean, Pearl Jam heads will follow Pearl Jam anywhere. They will go see them 3 times in a row,
Yeah.
night after night. They have that kind of dedication, where there's certain bands, they like that's how they live, you know, and really as an
Right.
artist, because the way the record industry is, touring is the way that you actually are sustainable as a musician, because
Yeah.
that's the only way you really get the money, which
Definitely.
is kind of it's sad. Yeah, you gotta be on the train, on the
Right.
plane, and on the bus, but that's the way of our industry. They don't value the art itself. You get very little
Mhm.
pay for the individual piece of art. You have to try to
Exactly.
monetize it in other ways.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I haven't been to too many like huge stadium shows in my life. Most more
Mm,
like small indie kind of stuff, kind of things, but it's mind blowing how many people go to like a stadium show where it's huge. I actually went and
yeah,
saw
the
Lizzo
festival.
not the other last week or a week before with my husband. And it's interesting. I actually saw her at South by Southwest like 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and just kind of stumbled upon her. And, she and the big girls were still just wearing like plain old leotards. And now they're like
Yeah.
doing all these costume changes and everything. So it's been crazy to see that.
Big.
Yeah, huge.
They got
I know.
big.
Yeah. It was a fun show.
The thing. Yeah, that's the difference is like the festival scene really helps a lot of independent bands when it can be active, when you see these really big like the Lollapaloozas and the big European festivals, because they go for multiple days, multiple stages, and a lot of indie bands, you can get a really good gig.
Yeah.
Like if you're
definitely.
on one of the stages, you get a big payday. You get a payday that you wouldn't get. It would take you years to get off of Spotify. You won't get it. So it just that forces the band to get on the road, because you find out if I go to London and I show up for UK and I get on this festival, and then I go to Berlin, and then I go over to Korea and I go to Japan, you can make money. You can actually make you're actually able to be that artist, but you have to be on the road.
So do you do a lot of festivals or just mostly online? Yeah, it gets old. So
I have been an online artist just because, I'm just starting to do them now. I had sponsored my own series that I was doing based off guests on the podcast. So I had this thing called the PEG Bedroom Producer Festival. And so what the qualification was is if you get interviewed by the Ghost, then you get to be on this 3-day festival. We did 2 of them, one in 2021 and one in 2020. And we're going to do a third one. And we're getting sponsors like Newsly and all these other people are starting to come in. But, it's for emerging and independent artists. Everybody gets a 30-minute set. But now I'm starting to guest on other people's shows, other people's things. I'm starting to do that for me as an independent. But I still do my own thing with my podcast guests as my kind of thing that people are kind of doing a barter economy. If I interview you, then you do my show for free, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of do things. We do it like that. And then we get a whole show. I had like 30 bands and everybody did it.
That's amazing.
I interviewed them for their work. So they did me a favor and they did a show without any money. And so, but I
love that. You get to meet so many people. Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the vibe. I got a hippie vibe.
Yeah. I know. That sounds like fun though. It's like, I love that you get to like meet all these artists and then bring them together for a festival. That's awesome. You're working hard.
Well, there's opportunities, to do stuff, because then I could, engage like your audience, like if we're doing this festival, and maybe I could like point out clothes from your brand, and then push it out there, and then that just gives people opportunities. So as I meet people, then I start to pitch like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to get them on board? Wouldn't it be cool to get this company? We were a couple of companies that give like gear, like
it's very cool.
Or get a mic to give everybody like a preamp. Yeah, so you end up being able to barter ideas and say, hey, I'll give your company all this ad time so you can talk about your gear. And these are all musicians, so they want to know about mics. They want, mixers. So it's an opportunity. Like I'm doing a 3-day thing now. And then clothing to like music fans because they're into fashion. Then that's an opportunity to pitch that. So you can bring all these different people in different areas. People who are selling supplements. It's like, these people are new age. Maybe they want a supplement. So you can get all kinds of people to get together on the same. Then it starts to work.
Right. I love that. It's people, older people, maybe even older than us. I don't feel like that people really connect as much as they used to. I mean, like we were saying, everything's online, but I love doing a podcast. You get to meet someone and, connect with lots of other people. And I like to promote my friends' projects too a lot. And, vice versa. They do great for me too. I think it's good for everyone.
Yeah, well, I think the cool thing about this podcast universe is like, you meet so many different people, and then you start to see the synergy and the connections. Because one time I was on a podcast and somebody was like, "Whoa, is a musician really an influencer?" It's like, well, what, weren't the Beatles influencers?
I was gonna say, yeah, definitely. Yeah, the
I had
Rolling
some person,
Stones.
they were like a mentor, and I came in on
Mhm.
their podcast as a guest, and they were doing their life coach pitch. And they said, "Well, this isn't really about music." I said, "Musicians are life coaches and mentors. They create the soundtrack of people's lives.
That's very
People, the
true.
civil rights movement was motivated by Dylan music, by Curtis
Mhm.
Mayfield and the Impressions music. Music has a lot of power. It has just as much power as any influencer, any mentor, any shaman. Right? It has an
Absolutely.
effect. So 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 then they were saying, "Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah, it's not just your elevator music
Yes.
soundtrack to your jogging. That's
Yeah.
not what it's about."
Yeah, and it's about creating an
Yeah,
emotion and a shared experience. If you're at a show, um, it's I mean, I love music. And I'm happy my daughters are both into music too. We have this great place I live in Decatur, which is just outside of Atlanta, and we have a really great
mhm.
place called Eddie's Attic, and it's a listening room. So, you go in and musicians are playing, and yeah, it's great. And you've got your table and everyone's quiet because they're really listening. And I absolutely love it. And now my daughters love to go there too.
Yeah, it's like a Nashville kind of, like Athens has got that Nashville kind of music city vibe. It's like if you
Definitely.
go to certain cities, like Boston has an area where it's like there's a music area, right? In New
Mhm.
York, you had that CBGB kind of vibe. You still have places like that.
Yep.
In LA, you had Burrum, there's always these scenes, and that's where all the musicians like get together, and you
Right.
get to see like the coffee shop crowd where all the young, like really emerging singer
Yep.
songwriters show up, and that's always been something. I used to go to Northampton, Mass, and there was a
Okay.
place called the Fire and Water, and that's kind of where I started. I started just reading poetry in
Oh,
Northampton.
cool.
It's near like Smith and Mount Holyoke, and I'd go to this place called the Fire and Water, and it's a cafe that allow people to do free form poetry and
Uh-huh.
music, and
Oh,
bands that
very
just could
cool.
show up, and then they could just play
I
or
love
read
that.
poetry. And that to me is that's the kind of scene that's so positive, but it really
Definitely.
gets people out there. And I've always been a big promoter, help people creatively get out there. I mean, from a business person, that's why I talk to
Yep.
people like yourself and talk to a lot of emerging business owners or people trying to get out there and get their message out. Because I feel it's like the same thing.
Yeah,
It's like people
definitely.
should be aware of brands like yours, like they're aware of
Mhm.
a brand new band. It's the same thing to me. It's
Right.
not that far off. And off the written page, it's like, why are you doing that? Like, is that the same? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's
It's the
interesting.
same
I
thing
think
to
when
me.
you put yourself
But
out there, you're always gonna have critics, and you're always gonna have people that are like, Why are you doing it?" Right? But, some of I've always kind of, like, walked the line between, you know, practicing law and, being very, like, buttoned up and, that side of me, and then there's always been a creative side of me that was obviously very missing when I was practicing, when I was a litigator. So it's
yeah,
funny because my career's been all over the place, um, but in the end, it kind of makes sense to me now what I'm doing. I'm being creative. I'm doing, my uh, video projects and documentary, and starting my new company is also creative. Um, I mean, I've never designed
yeah.
clothes before, you know. I'm just kind of one
Well,
of those
I
people
love.
that's like, if I can find it on YouTube, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's how as a musician years ago. I actually, when I was 17, I saw Joy Division. I saw New
Oh,
Order.
cool.
And then I went to a guitar center and I said, I didn't know how to play anything. And I was like, I
Yeah,
saw, Nick Rhodes. I'm like, I want to do that. Right. So I
yeah.
went and I saved my money and I got like a Juno and I got a
That's
because
so
like I
cool.
just had the force of will. Like I had that I just wanted to do it because I saw all these bands and like I was really into them and I was a music fan and I was listening to
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so
Right.
then so I said, well, yeah, why not get like a Hammond B3 or get a Yamaha piano? And then if I have it, then I'm going to learn it.
Right. Yeah,
And
you're going to play with it,
I
and yeah,
forced because I wanted to do it. I just did it.
that's so
And,
cool.
you know, after all these years, I got to a certain point where I can get it, you know, and to me, it's the passion of it, of
Yeah,
when you're a
definitely.
musician, you do it because you love it. You love it. Like you're doing your business because you love it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you had an idea, actual idea, make it real. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's creative
Yeah.
people. That's what we do.
Yeah, and you know, it's tough because there's always
That's all
like the
part of it.
right. You think of the people that are like, you know, they have to put aside their creative career in order to go out and make money doing something, you know, a day job. And I know there's lots of creatives with day jobs for sure, but it's, I mean, it's great when you can kind of bring it all together and, you know, make it have your day job be
Yeah.
creative, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's like my daughter, she's in a really good position. She's going to school to be an art director. She's like, you know, uh, graphic artist, which is a fancy way of saying a cartoonist. But
Yes,
she
yeah,
can do multiple types of oils, paintings, pastels, and she's gotten good enough that she can do logos. She works on graphic novels. She does storyboards. She does art direction. So she now is in
very
an art
cool.
direction group that's working with disabled artists to push disabled
Oh, wow.
artists. And she's an art director, and she's going to go to University of Pennsylvania for like a master's in it through online way of doing it. And so, yeah, her goal
Very
is to
cool.
have like a design studio that's all encompassing, from doing like logos for bands and independent companies
Mm-hmm.
to doing like full projects like, you know, anime and manga
Right.
type
Yeah.
enterprise. She's totally got this idea of like some of it will be like cartoons, some will be you know, movies, some will be business work to support the
Yeah.
more alternative work. And that to me, I
Right.
thought like that's really cool that she's got this wide ranging idea to actually be able to do it and be
Definitely.
sustainable in terms of like, yeah, I don't have to have a day job because this is my job.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say the production company I worked at in LA, it was the kind of thing where we did commercial stuff, we did TV stuff, but that also paid for the documentaries. You know what I mean? The real passion projects. So that it's a great
Hmm.
way of going about it. Is, you know, kind of doing
Yeah, you have
something to
to
pay
find
the bills to do
something
your
commercial.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah
your true art.
exactly.
It's the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like this podcast is how I can go and put out like a 2 hour long album. Like I'm a
Yeah,
kind of old
right.
school retro guy. My album, Peg Forever, is like 2 hours long. It's 19 songs, 2 hours long. Most songs are 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's not what you
Oh
would
wow,
expect
yeah.
in this age. It's more what you would have
Yes.
thought, like Genesis or
Mm-hmm.
Parliament, or that's kind of who I grew up with. So that's why
Yeah,
I write, right? So that's not what's kicking today, but because I do the
right.
podcast, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
And so I actually that, but then my podcast actually does the other piece. So I'm able to kind of have a wide ranging thing going on, which I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
the way you have
awesome.
to figure it out in this world. To be a business
Yeah,
person and an artist at the same time
right,
is difficult,
exactly.
but you know, any artist, it is your brand, you know.
Yeah. It's, you know,
You know,
my
I
oldest
think
daughter is
we're
looking
all
at
about brand.
colleges now. Yeah. Yeah, right. You have to have a personal brand. Um, I tell my daughters, like,
Hmm.
you don't have to know what you wanna do with your life. You just have to know what you wanna do next. And, you know, and that's kind of how
Yeah,
my whole career has been. Like, I've followed where the path has led me, and, it's been great. I've very wide ranging experience, which is wonderful.
I think it's awesome to see your artistic capabilities being brought out in the thing that you do day to day, right? So
Yeah,
you're a designer.
definitely.
You did the art,
Yeah.
you know, the film work and the work with the musicians. that is just fantastic because we live in a world where I run into people and they're like, all they want to talk about is like crypto profitability and investments and this. And then like, I had some guy that was like into finance and then he
Oh
looked at my
boy.
numbers and you're like, oh, that's not profitable. Why are you even doing it? I'm like, well, art isn't always about being some kind of mega profit. It's about
Right.
the artistic nature. And I had tried to explain to him about the story about the Velvet Underground and Big Star. And he was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. It's like, if it doesn't make money, it's not good. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
but that's that kind of
Yeah.
the mindset of like an investment banker. They're
Yeah,
like, oh, if
exactly.
you're not hitting 20 million, why are you even doing it? Like, if you're not making, if you're not able to be in a bank, like, well, but that's not what the whole point is.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
I've been very lucky. I have tons of friends in Chicago, LA, now here in Atlanta, and almost all of them have their own like creative thing going on. Visual artists and musicians and graphic artists, you name it.
mhm.
So I got a great group of friends.
Yeah, it's cool to be around the crowd that actually understands art. Get around
Hmm.
the crowd. There's like I run into some people I went to college with, and they're all like those A level people, like they're in the boardroom type people, making
Yeah, oh
those kind of
yeah.
things. And okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a totally different thing. It's like, okay, I understand where you guys are, and I chose not to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I made a choice. It's not that I
I
couldn't.
chose not to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
that's kinda like me
I
in
didn't
law. I was
want to
just
go
like,
there.
I could practice law for the next 30 years and become a partner in a law firm, but it was I was miserable.
Yeah,
You have to make your choices
you
in
knew
life.
your heart. Yeah, there's a lot of
Mhm.
people, they stay in that miserable position, and then they gotta
Right.
go get an analyst, they gotta get a psychoanalyst, they gotta because they're not doing what they want, right?
Right.
And so, like, you really have to look in the looking glass, like the old Victorian poets used to say, and really
Right.
figure out who is that you and who's that other you, and who do you really wanna do you really wanna self-actualize? Like, the way I always talk about, like, the way David Bowie was able to self-actualize and actually, Ziggy make Ziggy happen and make that
Right,
happen.
right. Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
and that's like it's like that's like a true artist. He actually took something is in his head and he made it be like the whole story. It actually became real
Yeah.
because
Right.
just because his creativity and his belief in it. And so that's what if that's what you want to do, that's what you should go for. You should go for something that's going to make you feel better inside your heart, your soul, your mind, everything. Not
Absolutely.
just look at the material, which because that's why you do what that's why I like creative people
Mhm.
because you make that choice. Like you don't want to be a lawyer. I want to
Right.
make my own business. I want to be a designer. I want to do something that's sustainable.
Right.
If you sit in a law firm, it's like yeah, everybody's gonna think that's if people in your family and your friends. Oh, that's a cool thing to do. That's the right
Right.
way to do it.
Exactly.
Art's always kind of not looked at it as the right thing. It's more,
Mhm.
it's not as stable or whatever. But I've always been a person like go where your heart's gonna go, and then things
Absolutely.
happen. I find
Yep.
that things that people come to you, people see what you're doing. If you believe in yourself, other people will believe in you.
Absolutely.
That's what I
And
feel.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've the way I've like gotten different projects is always through like people I know and I have these crazy opportunities. Like I started producing because I was working on a project with the Nobel Peace Laureates and making a music program for kids. So it's like just random things like that and lead you to the next step. You just never know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you put yourself out there, like they always tell people, if you got an idea and you just keep on
Hmm.
doubting yourself, and then you
Yeah.
never put it out because you're scared of
Yeah.
what people are gonna think. I tell people all the time, if you're a creative, as soon as you put that idea out, there's a bunch of haters that say they don't like it, right?
Right.
But that's not you don't
Always.
have to listen to that. You have to just go, like, if you just keep it up, it's never gonna happen. So you have to
Yeah.
be able to take that kind of rejection because, like, failure is a big part of anything.
Absolutely.
Any business person with the fears of how you right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, as I've gotten older, I don't give a shit really what other people think. You know, it takes a while to get to that point where you're like, you feel secure and you're like, I can do my thing and I don't care what you think. Because I spent a lot of time when I was younger, like
Yeah.
trying to make people happy, trying to please other people. That's the beauty of being, you know, 50 plus.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to go to Berkeley, and then I ended up went to Bowdoin because people wanted me to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. So it's
Yeah,
like I ended up doing like, not doing what people wanted me to do, and because I wanted to do what I want. Uh,
right.
Sometimes it's like that's a hard road because people don't, they're like, oh, well, that's not like. I remember I was telling my parents like, oh, I want to go to Berkeley, and like, well, how are you going to do any money, make any?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like they automatically like, oh, music not going to go anywhere. So it's like you can't do that. You're not Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
You're not Prince. So you're like, what do you think you're doing?
Well, that's, you know, it's
Yeah,
like
you just gotta believe in what you.
exactly. I mean, got into an industry I knew nothing about. And if you're committed to it and you have a passion for it, you learn, you know, you teach yourself and go for it.
Well, thank you for being on the program. We've hit like our hour mark, and that's kind of our
Okay.
flag when we have to kind of close it out. But I'm very happy that I think we had a great conversation. Sorry for any of the
Absolutely.
problems with the connection. It's the way things.
Oh, no problem.
But
Yeah, no, this
yeah,
has been
with this,
great.
we'll let the people know that we're going to be on Spotify. We're going to be on Spotify video podcast later. We're going to be on Newsly. We're going to be on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. So this will get
Awesome.
migrated out all over the web, all of our channels, and we'll let you know where it's going to be through our connection. So your fans will know. We
Perfect.
also create a landing for like a
Okay.
Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that, and we will put that
Mhm.
up and we'll send you that. So all that stuff will be done fully tomorrow. But we were live
Awesome.
tonight on Facebook,
Okay.
YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. But all the rest of it's going to happen. We'll be able to, all your customers and stuff will know about it fully tomorrow, and we'll let you know
Wonderful.
through our connection. But thank you again
That's
for being on
fantastic.
tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
Well, very much. Thank you. And have a
Okay.
great night.
Thanks, Keith. Bye-bye.